A famine rises in the land. Elimelech and his wife Naomi decided it's better to move from the land of Canaan to the land of the Moabites. They pack up their belongings and their two sons and they leave home. Life isn't bad in the land of the Moabites. It's a foreign land, but life goes on. Then Elimelech dies. Naomi's heart aches with terrible sorrow, but her sons support her, and in time Mahlon and Chilion get married. Naomi's daughters-in-law may be Moabite, but Naomi finds they are everything a mother could hope for her sons. Ruth and Orpah are good. They're kind to their husbands. They get along great with their mother-in-law. For a while, life seems to get better, but life is also uncertain. About 10 years after the move to Moab, the unthinkable happens. Mahlon and Chilion both die. Naomi is left alone in a foreign land with no family, no means of support, no hope for the future. Ruth and Orpah stay by her side, and for a short time the three women struggle to survive. Naomi's heart and spirit are broken, but her body keeps living, and it keeps needing food. She hears back in Canaan there's food again, so she wearily decides to return to her home country around Bethlehem. Ruth and Orpah set out on the journey with her, but Naomi knows how hard it would be for her daughters-in-law. They are Moabites. It's bad enough to be a foreigner, but amongst her people in Bethlehem, Moabites have questionable reputations, deserved or undeserved, and certainly her daughters-in-law don't deserve it, but they get the reputation anyway. And besides, as women alone, they'll be incredibly invulnerable. There will be simply no future in Bethlehem for them. They will be vulnerable to all sorts of dangers, and she tells them so. If she'd had other sons, they would have married Ruth and Orpah, but there's no hope, no possibility of hope. In her despair, Naomi says the hand of the Lord has turned against her. In a world in which there wasn't really a concept of free will, it was believed everything that had happened was what God had directed. Famine had driven them out of Canaan, her husband died, her sons died, and now there's nothing left for Naomi to do except return home to exist for a time before dying herself. Indeed, when she does return home and is greeted by old friends, she tells them not even to call her by name. Naomi means pleasant, and Naomi's life was bitter, so she tells them to call her Mara, which means bitter. Why? Because she says the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. She goes on to say, I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? Bad things happen in life. It's always been a struggle for people of faith to understand why God allows such bad things to happen. For even if God does not make bad things happen, it's undeniable that God allows them to happen in a world of free will. In the book of Psalms, there are more laments about life than there are celebrations. There are at least as many pleas to God for help as there are psalms of praise. There are cries of pain and anguish so powerful that ever since people have cried out the same words in times of trouble, just as Jesus himself did from the cross. Obviously, even for people of deepest faith, there are times when we feel a terrible gap between us and God. There are times that it feels like God has abandoned us and there's no hope for the future. And then we may, with Naomi, feel like saying, call me Mara, call me in my life by its bitterness. But what Naomi hasn't begun yet to realize is that there is help available. God's love is reaching out to her, particularly through the human love of people around her. Or rather, she has tried to push that love away. Remember that both Orpah and Ruth try to go with her. They try to share her sorrow. They try to help bear the burden. When she tells them to leave her alone, both of them cling to her. It says they will go with her to Canaan anyway. Naomi pushes even harder. And sadly, Orpah tearfully decides to leave. And sometimes that's what happens. We cling to our bitterness and we do not allow God to help us. Or sometimes we do not recognize how much God is helping us. Like the old joke about the man expecting God to help him from the flood, but refusing the help that was offered. Or like the story of footprints in the sand, where the man looks back and doesn't realize how much God carried him through the hard times. Naomi pushes away the love and the help she is offered, and Orpah sadly leaves. There's something stubborn and unyielding in the love of Ruth that will not leave Naomi alone. Do not press me to leave you, or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well. Naomi cannot stop her from coming, so they journey on together. But her bitterness and her sorrow still consume her, so Naomi tells the women of Bethlehem to call her bitter. To sustain them, Ruth goes out into the fields to glean. She suggests to Naomi that she may find favor in someone's sight. Now, what she means by this, we don't exactly know. But obviously, despite her own suffering, Ruth has great faith, and she believes something will happen for their benefit. And it does. Boaz sees Ruth. He's impressed by her hard work and her concern for her mother-in-law. He makes sure she receives food to eat and is able to glean a generous amount. He gives orders for his workers to leave her alone, not to molest her. Naomi is surprised by how much Ruth has brought home, and Ruth explains what had happened. We see the first tiny break then in her bitterness. Naomi exclaims, "Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." From that time on, Naomi finds she is able to plan for the future, to give help and guidance to her daughter-in-law. In the end, Ruth marries Boaz and bears a son, and Naomi's arms are filled with new life. God always wants to do that for us. Amen.